Welcome back. Junkies on 106.7 The Fan, now broadcasting live from our DC Lottery Live studios downstairs here at 1015 Half Street. We do that because we have a very powerful man with us.
I don't know about that.
The executive director of the NFLPA.
Oh, it's definitely
D.
true.
Smith. What's happening?
Man, I am fantastic. It's a great summer, great new studios.
Yeah, thank you. And by the way, this is the first time we've had D on since he was reelected for another. How long is the term? No, 3-year term?
So it's been 74 years. It's another 3-year term. Yeah. Sometimes it feels like dog
He
years.
had about 74 guys go against you, right? It was like the Republican candidates.
It was slightly larger than the Republican field out right now. But yeah, I'm happy to be reelected. Looking forward to another great term with players.
And by the way, what was that like just to be in the eye of that hurricane? Because I actually feel now it's gotten to the point now where we're friends with D.
Yeah.
So now I take it personally. And as that was getting,
runs against him as your enemy.
I get pissed. And there are a lot of reasons for that. But like as that approached,
Yeah.
the smear campaign came out.
Yeah.
And how much did that affect you? Did that piss you off, or you just knew that's the game?
That's just the game.
I mean, there were certain NFL writers. Well,
Sure.
I won't say them.
Sure.
But I will say their names, who clearly were being fed information by your opponents, and
Sure.
they were trashing you. There were articles coming out specifically to trash you, like the eve of your re-election.
Well, look, I look back on when I was elected the first time and remember that a writer for NFL.com actually came out and endorsed Troy Vincent. So, look, it's just part of the game. Unfortunately, the way sport is, everything's about sport and competition. But you know what? I ignore all of it. I've got a job. I represent the players. They're the only people who can elect me. I'm sure tons of people can write about stuff. But
I'm sure there were other good candidates.
Yeah,
Didn't
sure.
you have a buddy who was running for it?
Jason Belzer. Yeah. I'm not sure what your relationship is with.
By the way,
I think it
you
used to
catch
be
it
a
on
lot
radio.
better. I think
That was a cold stare at first from D. Smith.
It was just kind of a smirk. It was like, really? Is your buddy?
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, thrilled that the players made the decision that they made, and that we're in it, right? So you have a job that kind of comes with being in the eye of the storm, and
So
that's cool.
I hate to say
We
this,
assumed
but
you were the most qualified.
His phone just lit up right before we went on the air.
It was Jason Belzer.
I hate to say it. You don't know who it was.
Don't even say who it is.
I can't say it?
Yeah, no, don't say
How
it.
about it's a guy who's in the news a lot?
Don't say it.
Des Bryant? I don't know.
Wow. Wow.
No.
Wow. But yeah, no, so look,
As
here's
big a name as you can find in the NFL right now that he has
Roger?
to deal with.
Okay.
Yeah, we're headed into training camp. We're headed into training camp. I know there's a lot out there. Happy to talk about things that have been in the news. It's been a busy off season.
Well, we have to kick off then with the Brady deal.
We'll get right
Sure.
into it.
And what's interesting is Dee and I were talking about this as we were walking down the studios, and it kind of made big news yesterday was as everybody was kind of positioning, the NFLPA was trying to go to Doty, right? That's who's been really good with the NFLPA. The
Get home
NFL,
court advantage.
yeah, they're trying to get their case heard there in New York and their judge or whatever. And as this was all going down, a judge issued almost a gag order on you guys, essentially, right? What did he say?
Yeah, I mean the judges in a lot of these trials go to great lengths to keep the process above board and for the lawyers and everybody involved to act in a dignified manner. And I don't have any problem with that. So happy to talk about how we always defend players. I've been on the show before, and whatever case we've talked about, whether it was Rice, Hardy, Peterson, Brady. We've always talked about things in a way about players' rights and the role of the union to defend those rights. And but we're going to do that today, and I respect the process, respect the judge. I certainly understand why he wants or would want a scenario where people are toning down on the rhetoric and not making it so inflammatory. And I think that's good for the process, but always happy to talk about it.
So why was this judge different? Were you expecting Doty here, or this guy Richard Kyle?
Right.
What do we know about him?
Well, look, we filed in Minnesota because a judge there, Judge Doty, had already ruled on the notice issue, which is an issue that is probably the pivotal
precedent.
issue, right? Pivotal issue in the Brady appeal, and it does establish a precedent. And we believed that because that ruling from that judge involved the issue of notice, and because we do have a pending contempt hearing on the issue of commissioner discipline currently pending in Minnesota, that made sense of where to file it. We're going to be in New York, and
What was your reaction when you found out that he was going to
Yeah, I mean,
rule
I've been a trial lawyer
city?
my whole life, so you
Didn't
know.
surprise you.
Well, no, I mean, and judges make decisions about what forum you're going to be in, and for lawyers, you pivot, and that's where you're going to be.
Can you comment on the NFLPA issued a statement shortly after the ruling, right? And you gave it without inflammatory statements or anything.
Right.
Can you say what your beefs are with
Sure.
with the ruling and how it was given out,
Sure,
etc.?
there's 3 or 4 main issues for the players, and this would be for any player, regardless of whether it's Tom Brady or anybody else. But just like the issue of in Adrian Peterson, the law is clearly established that you have to give a person notice about what rule they're going to be punished under. And in Adrian Peterson, if we remember, he got punished under a new policy that applied to old conduct. In the Brady case, the notice issue is somewhat similar because it is a rule that is not even applicable to players. It's a rule that's applicable to clubs.
And which rule is this?
This is the guidelines that Troy Vincent used to impose the discipline on Tom Brady was under a competition rule that applies to clubs. There is
specifically spelled out for clubs, not players.
And there is a collectively bargained rule that applies to tampering with equipment or rules that protect fair play. That rule is collectively bargained. That rule wasn't used. So our argument is always going to be that the players should be subject to the collectively bargained rules, and when someone imposes either a penalty or imposes a process that's inconsistent with the collective bargaining agreement, that's our job of a union to fight it.
I also found it interesting and fascinating that you guys point out that you even had a problem with Troy Vincent ruling on this because that wasn't collectively bargained.
Absolutely.
Why is Troy Vincent? I thought Roger Goodell was ruling on this.
Well, so did we. And the collective bargaining agreement explicitly spells out that only the commissioner is the person who's empowered to impose discipline. So when that decision was delegated to Troy Vincent.
Are you fist pumping when he's doing that?
Well, we didn't know.
You didn't know until they issued the statement.
Well, we didn't know until they told us that they were actually having Troy Vincent do it. We stand on the collective bargaining agreement. So, you know, for example, we had a great lawyer retire yesterday in the office, Tim English. Been a lawyer for the PA for 33 years, and during his goodbye speech, he said, "Look, my first collective bargaining agreement was in about 50 pages. Our collective bargaining agreement now is over 400 pages. But our job is to defend that agreement as it relates to players' rights. So if there is something that occurs that is blatantly inconsistent with that, our job as lawyers is to protect our players."
My guess.
What would their argument be? You're a trained lawyer.
Sure.
So you can make a devil's advocate argument on all of that. What is their argument that Troy Vincent did it? Is it that you can delegate a decision and ultimately Troy went to Roger Goodell and ultimately he might make the argument that Roger Goodell did make the decision?
Yeah, I mean, you can always, look, our job, lawyers make arguments. And and I've seen their papers and know what their arguments are. And I'm sure their arguments are going to be about what is within the commissioner's power to lawfully delegate. But when I look at the collective bargaining agreement and it says the commissioner shall, I read that as the commissioner shall be the exclusive person to impose discipline. And when that is delegated, that is inconsistent with the collective bargaining agreement.
The thing that I don't understand, and I think a lot of fans don't understand, is, all right, so Goodell works for the owners,
Right.
essentially.
Sure.
That's what he does.
Sure.
The 31 owners.
Sure.
He hands down the suspensions, but he also hears the appeals.
Right, and what's been interesting is over the period of time, there have been instances where the commissioner has delegated the hearing to someone else, and we've been fine with that. We've always insisted that we should have a neutral arbitrator, but under the collective bargaining agreement, the commissioner has delegated the hearings for those appeals to other people. That didn't occur here. So our job, our duty really, is to take a look at the process and the penalty, how those two things are implemented, and if those things are inconsistent with the CBA,
All right, we're talking to D. Smith. He's the executive director of the NFLPA. And let's just speak directly to that one issue, because I know you hear this all the time. We hear this all the time when people go, I mean, Darren Ravel tweeted the other day about how terrible the CBA is. And people always point to, because of this exact same thing, the players agreed to this. They agreed to allow Roger to do this, to rule on this, etc. And I don't want to speak for you, but I know I've had conversations with people from the NFLPA, and the argument, I think, is, correct me if I'm wrong, is, okay, in any negotiation, there's give and take.
Absolutely. And
if 2,000 players are not affected by this, and maybe every year, maybe 10 players might be affected by this, right. You know, what are you going to do? You're going to hold out and you're going to
lose money?
And lose money for the 2,000 players that will never, ever, ever be affected by this? Or will you do the best deal you can for your constituency? And then in these 10 instances every year where this might happen, then you fight them tooth and nail.
Right. Well, it's a little bit of both. I mean, look, collective bargaining is as messy and as complicated and as tough as anything that anybody will ever go through. And a good deal is a deal where both sides walk away without everything they wanted. The issue of neutral arbitration came up during our collective bargaining agreement. The owners did not want to have a neutral arbitrator when it came to personal conduct. They didn't want to have a neutral arbitrator when it came to drug policy, but now we do. Mm-hmm. They didn't want a neutral arbitrator back in 2006 as it related to on-field fines. Now we do. So the only two instances where we have actually walked back on the exclusive power of the commissioner has been since 2009. So we do have a neutral arbitrator for both drug policy and for on-field fines now. When you get to where we are with personal conduct, the owners have resisted a neutral arbitrator since the beginning of time.
Why do you think that is?
I think that they believe that they lose control if they have a neutral arbitrator. So the one thing that the players didn't agree to is the collective bargaining agreement doesn't license someone to be unfair. This collective bargaining agreement does not license someone to not follow the dictates of the collective bargaining agreement. And when you look at whether it is Bounty, Ray Rice, Adrian Peterson, or even Greg Hardy, in all four of those cases, the one thing that the arbitrator used to overturn the punishment was what?
The agreement.
The collective bargaining agreement.
Yeah.
So no one can stand up and say that this deal allowed Roger Goodell to do X, when in the last four cases, it was the same deal that we used to overturn his decision. Right, so and anybody who wants to think that way is just somebody who either doesn't care or doesn't like to read.
Or they have an agenda. They have an agenda.
Right.
Yeah. All right, so again, explain how Goodell, in your opinion, is violating the agreement in this case with Brady.
Yeah, there's three or four main issues. One is the issue of delegation that we've talked about. Second, the issue of notice that we've talked about, that it's a rule that applies to the clubs and not to the players. And lastly, when you look at the Wells report, one of our main issues is the conclusion of the Wells report said that it was more probable than not that the player was, quote unquote, generally aware of someone else's conduct. And our concern here is that if the standard for issuing a penalty is something like more probable than not that you were generally aware, that is a standard that appears nowhere in the collective bargaining agreement.
You can hang with us for another segment, right?
Oh, yeah.
All right, D. Smith, Executive Director of the NFLPA, join us right here on the Junkies. Welcome back. Junkies on 106.7 The Fan, hanging out downstairs at our DC Lottery Live studios, 1015 Half Street, with the Executive Director of the NFLPA, D. Smith. What's your summer like? Do you get a couple weeks off?
Have you gone on vacation?
I went away. I was away for 3 days last week at the beach, and spent most of the time
on the phone,
writing a brief.
Pretty fun.
Yeah, good times.
One of my buddies texted me yesterday. He's a friend of the show. Sackshine Mike is a character on the show, been a character for many years. And he wanted to call into the show. He's like, do you have a racket guest tomorrow? I was like, well, we have D. Smith. He's going to be in the studio. And he's like, oh, he's the second most powerful black man in the country.
I mean,
I don't think he said it exactly like that.
But. Yeah. You know,
Isn't that
there's
pretty
nobody,
truthful?
there's nobody in my family who thinks that's true. Absolutely no one.
I mean, you got to put LeBron in there probably too.
Yeah,
Dee, Obama.
or thousands of people. Let's put thousands of people in front of
I
that.
can't think of many others.
Can we talk about, and you just say whatever you
Sure.
can say about the smashing the phone and all of that? What is your official sort of stance on that and how the phone factors in? From what I read, Tom and his people claim that they were told that they got the information they needed from the phone.
Look, we stand on process, and I rather not crawl through a lot of details, but our process issues with the league are issues of notice, due process, fairness, delegation, and what the CBA entails, and that's where this case is going to be decided. And I think that the important issues here for our players is that they can rely on a process where they know what the punishment is going to be, they know what the process is going to be, and they know that it's going to be consistent with the collective bargaining agreement. So I know that.
How's that relate to the phone, D?
Well, you can make.
He didn't want to get into details.
I know.
You could make the argument that nothing does. Right? Because look, the 4-game suspension was predicated on an investigation, on a process that the league followed. We made the argument that that process was inconsistent with the CBA. And I know, and the record is clear about the information that was turned over to the league. The record is the record about what information the league has. Everybody is going to make their arguments or their personal judgments about what people do. But at the end of the day, lawyers rely on what the record is under oath.
Because essentially he's being punished because he smashed a phone.
Well, he's actually
right?
He's being punished because a paper came out and said that it was more probable than not that he was quote unquote generally aware of what other people did.
Right.
And our argument is that more probable than not that you were generally aware is a standard that is so low.
It's a leap.
It's a leap upon conjecture.
But it's football. It doesn't have to be beyond a reasonable doubt. It's football.
No, but
so if I just applied a common sense test to play devil's advocate, common sense, and I think most fans believe that the Patriots probably did cheat, and that Tom Brady knew it and was aware. I think that's what most people think, and I think that is a reasonable assumption based on what we have heard.
Yeah, but the standard that we have is dictated by a collective bargaining agreement.
Okay.
Not
and what is that standard then?
That standard, the law of the shop, is I believe something that's
preponderance of evidence. Okay, well, so more probable than not is similar to preponderance of evidence,
but general awareness is not.
Okay, but that's the next sentence.
But that's the problem. That's the problem. The problem is for us.
So more, you have no. So really, you don't have a problem with the more probable than not.
I don't have any problem with the standard of proof that has been generally applied pursuant to our collective bargaining agreement. It's when you change that and go lower to that.
What is?
Real quick, I'm going to put you on the spot, and I love you. You know that. I'm just going to ask the question because
here we go.
And you can answer it, and you will answer
I wish I was 6'1". Go ahead. Yes.
You're going to answer it.
6'6".
Finally.
You're going to answer it the way you have to and understand that. But I just think the listeners need to hear the question.
Sure.
Do you think Tom Brady knew that the balls were deflated before the game started?
No.
Okay.
I want to ask you.
He does represent the players.
Understood. And I just had to ask the question.
Right.
I mean, you asked me. I give my opinion. Answer's no.
I want to ask you about the beef that you guys have with this guy that was associated with the Wells report that you thought was maybe being a consultant or something, and then all of a sudden now he's at the table and he's almost like taking the ownership. What is the issue there with this person?
Well, the other issue on appeal is if the commissioner is going to sit as the arbitrator in the case, then this idea that a lawyer who represents the National Football League is the person who's going to help him out in the hearing, to us, is also problematic. We stand on the collective bargaining agreement, and I know it's not sexy, it's not fun, it's not interesting. But when two parties go through as tortuous a process that we went through for the collective bargaining agreement, we insist that the parties follow the rules.
So what did they do wrong? In other words, Roger can't have somebody he consults with? Is that the idea?
Yeah, that's the idea. And it's not so much that he can't have somebody that he consults with. We would argue that the collective bargaining agreement says that this should happen, and when you try to change it into a gray area or bootstrap another process that's not articulated with the CBA, we take the view that that's inconsistent.
I got a question. We've heard.
Oh, you got like a bunch now.
I do.
Okay?
No, I'm just.
I mean,
Are
like,
you done?
come on,
I'm gonna
I believe everything I read.
Yeah.
But we've heard multiple reports say that the league went to Tom and said, "Hey, just own up to what you did. We'll negotiate some sort of a reduction, just like they do with most guys. They did it with Hardy, they did it with Bell and all these guys. We'll just own up to what you did. We'll fine you. Maybe we'll give you a game or two." And he said, "No, I don't want any games. That's why I'm going to court." What can you say to that?
I mean, we never get into public discussions about offers. I know what the facts are here, and that's not true.
Okay.
Can we shift off Tom Brady for a second?
By the way, that's big.
Yeah, that he's saying there were no offers made
because
by
Tom Brady's getting killed publicly because the perception is he's saying, "Nope, I'm not even taking the game. I'm not even taking a quarter suspension. I'm going to court. I'm going to fight it all the way."
Right.
But if he was never even offered the reduction, even though that's what the NFL is saying, then that's huge to me.
Right.
Can we shift off of Tom Brady for a second?
Sure.
What do you think about the general kind of like the league in general and how it's moved? Now you've got games Thursdays, Saturdays, Sundays, Mondays. We love it as fans. How are the players feeling about it?
Well, I think two things. One, there are players who love playing on Thursdays. There's some who don't. A lot of it comes down to how coaches practice on those weeks and on those weeks following a Thursday game. I like it because it does keep football on sort of a perpetual cycle. If we come to a conclusion, however, that the way games are being structured threatens the health and safety of our players, then that's when we're going to step in and take a look. And we do take a look at the injury data and slice the injury data.
Like even for the extra point deal, right?
Right.
There was talk about, well, this is going to be more dangerous for the players because now they're going to have to actually play on an extra point.
Right, and those things, again, going back to your thing, there are some things that fans would love or hate, but at the end of the day, again, at the risk of, making everybody angry, we don't spend our time as a union trying to figure out what fans would love. At the end of the day, our job is pretty simple.
Can you talk about what's going on here with the Broncos and the Cowboys and potentially collusion, in regards to negotiating with some of these receivers? What's going on there?
We're looking hard at that issue. We made it abundantly clear to the teams that we certainly hadn't decided that we weren't going to go forward. And
the allegation is what? That
collusion between the two teams.
Between Denver and Dallas.
In other words, the owners or personnel, front office people are talking to each other and kind of saying, hey.
Gaming the deals.
Yeah, hey, we're only going to give them this much.
Correct.
You only give them this much.
Correct. And once again.
And you have proof of that, or there's. You're smiling.
Look, even though both players ended up with great contracts, if we believe that the conduct by the two teams violates the CBA, we fight that. And we do that because just because it might work out for two players on day one doesn't mean that it may not. That doesn't mean that it may work out for those players down the road. So if teams,
plus they could have gotten more here potentially.
Well, or even if they did, if teams collude and we have proof of collusion, we will always file a case and go after those two teams.
Is that something that's being fought in court now, or is that something that's in house?
We haven't made a decision yet to formally file, but we made it clear to the teams.
That you're investigating.
That we're investigating.
I feel like this is too serious right now. Let me ask you a question.
Let's lighten up.
Have you watched Ballers?
No.
So D.
You're not
Smith,
missing anything.
executive director.
You're not
hasn't
missing
watched.
anything.
Do you have shows that you watch? Like, do you want Karen? Do you sit down and watch shows together? Did she make you watch the Bachelorette? Or
Yeah. We're big on cooking shows. None of that's true. I don't really watch that much TV. I mean, I live a boring life. I mean, I watch PBS and news and.
You're literally
You
always
live a boring life.
no, but you're always attached to your cell phone. It doesn't leave you. How many do you have?
I only have. What kind of question is this? You know what? I see my lawyer.
This is the one I
calling,
always
and he's
see.
saying, well, "How many phones do you see?" I just have one. Yes, it's an iPhone.
Did you switch from the Samsung to
Don't
the
even
iPhone?
see. I knew that was coming. I just knew that was coming. Knew
Or
that was
whatever
coming.
date it
Knew
was.
that was coming. I carry one phone and get a lot.
What's
of
it like when you're executive director of the NFLPA and you're in charge of so many players? How many players are you in charge of? Essentially.
I'm not in charge of any of them.
You're not in charge, but you represent.
Yeah, I work for them. There's 2,000, about 2,000 players.
2,000 active players.
After the cut down.
Right.
Obviously, there's a lot more in camp right now.
So at any point, it might be 2,500, 3,000, whatever
Yeah,
the number may
correct.
be. And, even if it's happening just once or twice a week or something, somebody gets in trouble, I mean, your phone is blowing up at all times, at all hours of the
Sheldon
day.
Richardson.
Yes.
All
Like,
times.
when do you get the Sheldon Richardson phone call?
I get phone calls pretty much instantaneously.
Right.
So-
Is the phone right next to your head when you're sleeping?
I don't. You know what? I'll be dead honest with you.
You turn it off.
I turn it off at night.
Good.
And look, there's a great staff at the NFLPA office, about 140 folks. So, when I'm asleep, we've got more than great people
That can handle it.
That can handle it.
Yeah.
Right.
Real quick.
Do you ever just light into the
question.
guys, even though you got to represent them? Do you ever just light into the guys and go, "What are you thinking? You're driving 140 miles an hour. You
Oh,
Yeah,
stupid."
I mean, I'm sure if you talk to the guys, they know that look, I think it's a great game, but I do talk to our guys a lot about what their responsibilities are as men and good husbands and good fathers, and they've heard that over and over and over again, probably too much from me, but I do believe that, look, at the end of the day, there is a very short window for our guys to play. And the great news is that the way this collective bargaining agreement works, you have minimum salaries. There's no bottom feeders. Teams have to spend the money. Teams get to carry over. We want our owners to spend virtually every dime, and now they have to spend 99% of the salary cap. But your window for that opportunity is about 3 years. And if you don't maximize that window to get more out of football than football gets out of you,
You're a moron.
Well,
all right.
yeah,
Here's a
yeah.
quick question, because I know we got to run.
I had a quick
I
question.
know we got to break. Hold on. The Ray Rice deal. Do you have any evidence that there's collusion from the owners and not giving this kid at least another shot?
I think it's problematic that Ray Rice isn't at least in a camp right now.
Right?
I do.
Does he have a case?
Do you think he'll ever be in a camp?
I hope so.
Does he have a case? If he's not invited,
Right.
let's say in the next 2 years, he's never invited to another training camp, given his resume. Does he
You know,
have
like
some
anything
sort of
else,
case?
you can always make arguments. I think the focus for us should be, look, he's a young man who made a horrific mistake and has paid dearly for it. But I think he should be in a camp.
Yeah, we believe in redemption.
And we
right?
all do. I
Right.
mean, what person should?
Yeah. All right,
All right,
that's
D.
D. Smith. D, thank you
Thank you,
very,
buddy.
very
Oh,
much.
awesome, guys. Man,
Yeah.
thank y'all very much. Have a good summer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, hold on. We'll talk to him during the break. All right, don't go anywhere. Thank you.